What do you make of this? How is this going to be resolved?
Well, I'll just say that I think we are all feeling the effects of coming through the pandemic that lasted for 2.5 years, and indeed case numbers are still on the rise. We need to make sure that we are working very hard to create efficient and effective systems. I myself have been caught in airports, and it is a very difficult time.
In Canadian federal politics, the Canucks are represented by two separate yet unequal groups: the globalists who sold out and the opposition trying to salvage a country. These are their stories. Gang, what's up? Aaron here, Canadian Looney. Let's take a peek at our new Minister of Foreign Affairs. Anita Anand is not new to the cabinet, though. She's been there since 2019 under Trudeau, held varieties of positions since then, like Minister of Treasury Board. She's the one that was responsible for getting all of the vaccines into Canada. Thanks a lot for those jabs. Anyhow, Minister of National Defense, how is that looking these days? She's been the minister for so many departments that have gone way downhill. Now she's Minister of Foreign Affairs. Must be a real treat to come in behind Melanie Joly, leaving a line of bags to connect the dots. Let's take a peek at what more she can do for Mark Carney and a bunch of other things they did not mention in their campaign platform. Let's take a peek.
This meeting comes amid rising geopolitical tension and increasing disruption to global supply chains. As global challenges intensify, the G7 must meet this moment with purpose and with force. Can the Minister of Foreign Affairs share with this House Canada's priorities for this critical summer?
The Honourable Minister of Foreign Affairs.
Mr. Speaker, thank you to the member from Winnipeg South for the question. The world is facing geostrategic challenges, and Canada is ready to lead. Canada has what the world wants and the values to which the world aspires. As president of the G7, Canada will leverage our strength to seek new agreement on protecting our communities and the world, building energy security, and securing the economic partnerships of the future. The world needs more Canada, and we will deliver.
They're so hell-bent on this globalization, guys. That's not part of the deal we signed up for. Let's take a look.
Oh, yeah.
You just had your first meeting with ASEAN foreign ministers this morning.
Yes.
Just lay out for me, what is Canada's priority when it comes to the Indo-Pacific, and how will you compete with EU and Chinese influence in this region?
We are a Pacific nation ourselves, and I am here, the Carney government's first visit to the Indo-Pacific, my first visit to the Indo-Pacific, to stress the importance of multilateralism. Multilateralism in trade and economic matters in particular. We need to ensure that we are building resilient supply chains, that we are diversifying, and we are establishing those trade relationships. We are currently negotiating with ASEAN a free trade agreement, and we look forward to the conclusion of those negotiations. In fact, I'll be meeting with the negotiators today, as well as members of the business community, because we have to remember that there are numerous stakeholders, businesses on the ground in ASEAN and in Canada who will benefit from this free trade agreement when it is finalized.
So how long can we expect? When will this thing be signed? And also, Canada already actually have pretty robust agreements with Asian countries. So how much more can this agreement actually push for expanding trade with this region?
You are exactly right. We have trade agreements that are very versatile and very robust with multiple regions and countries throughout the world. In fact, we're the only G7 country that has a free trade agreement with every other G7 country. But given the stress in the global economic environment, it is necessary for us to do more. And that is why this free trade agreement between Canada and ASEAN is so very important. We will be continuing to work with alacrity to finalize the text of that free trade agreement to ensure that those resilient supply chains for the benefit of business and other stakeholders continues to occur.
So what's the timeline for that?
Timeline is as soon as possible, and I
year?
also want to make sure that that continues. But we didn't just talk about trade. We also talked about food security, energy security, and digital and AI sharing. And on the issue of energy security and natural resources, let me just say that Canada is a powerhouse in the area of energy and critical minerals, and indeed the second shipment of LNG has left Canadian shores on the coast of British Columbia, and it was Petronas, a company that I'm going to be meeting with, that was leading that charge. And so we're very grateful to Petronas, to Malaysian businesses, and to those who see Canada as the energy superpower that it is.
Let's talk about some of the sectors that has been hit by sectoral tariffs from the US. So autos, steel and aluminum, these are sectors where Asian countries are also exporting the same products. So Asia is not likely to absorb the kind of supply from Canada. If you're reducing reliance from the US, where else will you look for market for those products?
So those tariffs are hitting us as well, and we believe they're unjustified, and we're engaged in complex negotiations with the United States to address the tariffs and to ensure that we can come to an agreement. On the subject of ASEAN countries and Canada, what we want to do is to continue to support multilateralism, to continue to show the world that as there is global stress in the geostrategic environment, Canada is a partner that will always show up to open the doors to trade, to open the doors to free trade, to open the doors to multilateralism.
So tariffs have obviously been looming over the summit. Everyone is worried about how it will cause trade diversion. Realistically, is Canada able to meet the July 21st deadline to reach a trade deal with the United States?
So those are negotiations that are occurring behind closed doors for a reason. They are complex, they're intricate, they involve multiple sectors, and we have a long-standing history with the United States. We have the longest undefended border in the world along the 49th parallel. $300 billion of trade passes through our borders every single day. This means that we must ensure an agreement is reached to address the needs of Canadian workers, Canadian businesses, and the Canadian population at large. But that is something that is being worked on as we speak.
Okay, your party actually campaigned on keeping elbows out and making Americans feel the pain. Why does it seem like Mark Carney actually seems less reluctant, more reluctant actually, to retaliate against Trump's policy so far?
Well, you have to remember that we do have counter tariffs in place, and we are ensuring that we're putting our best foot forward for Canada, for Canadian industry and Canadian workers. That means having supports at home for workers and industry where needed. At the same time, we need to make sure that the best deal is reached for Canada and for Canadians. And that's exactly what Minister LeBlanc and Ambassador Hillman are doing right now at the negotiating table.
You talk about the first and second shipments of LNG to Asia. Will you be looking at expanding new markets for LNG and also increasing supply to the EU over the longer term?
Critical minerals, natural resources, and energy overall are Canada's superpower. And we are continuing to leverage our competitive advantage wherever possible. In fact, we signed a security and defense agreement with the EU recently. We are working on a free trade agreement with the ASEAN. So we are spreading our wings broadly to ensure that we are leveraging our competitive advantage, and we are making sure that we diversify. Diversification for an economy like Canada is the most important economic tool because we are a trading nation and we will always be committed to multilateralism.